So now we're gonna move to our panel. So I think, so do we have a microphone for the panel or, yeah, okay, cool. So that's gonna be easier then. So we're just gonna sit down, get prepared slowly. But surely we're gonna dive way more into multiplayer now. So that we can have like a common ground of understanding of what is production, but also what do you do at the various phases. Yeah, I'm gonna let people come on stage, and I actually need the clicker because we have slides for this panel as well. So just come over, guys. All right, thank you, Aarni. So I'll let you introduce yourself as soon as we have a microphone. Same for you. No, well, actually, we're gonna have a microphone for both of you guys, so it's much easier. All right, so we do have a bit more time, which is great because my talk was shorter and previous talk was shorter as well.
Let's use it then.
Yeah, that's right. So now the goal is really to dive into multiplayer. As I said multiple times, that mastering multiplayer is actually very hard. There's various stages that you can find yourself in. You can be someone that's been doing games for decades, and now you're dipping your feet in it, or you already have released games and have a full operation side of it. So I will skip introducing myself. So I'll let you guys introduce and what is your parkour, and then we're going to dive into the subject of this panel.
Yeah, so hello everybody. My name is Aarni Linnakangas. I am COO and co-founder at Superplus Games. We've been around for around 8 years now, so time flies. It's been quite a long journey for us. We're mostly known for our game called Hills of Steel 1. That has already like 100 million downloads, and it was a single-player game in the beginning, but we kind of started adding multiplayer elements to it, and we also created a sequel to Hills of Steel 1, Hills of Steel 2, which is a sort of a 3 versus 3 real-time PvP take on the same concept. We're also working on Oceans of Steel, which is coming out at the end of next month. That also has a kind of a different take on the PvP concept. And we also have a fourth game in production, which actually uses Photon's Quantum. But unfortunately, I can't reveal anything about it since it's a bit hush-hush at this point. But yeah, that's basically my introduction.
Hey, hello everybody. I'm Sami Lahtinen, head of studio in Dodreams. And yeah, I've been here for a while, so just celebrated my 20th anniversary in mobile games. So have been here since the black and white screens and crunchy buttons and 1 frame per second stuff. So yeah, I'm old. And yeah, Dodreams is a developer behind Driverhead, which is a car gladiator fight. And it's fun. If you haven't played it, please do. And it has gained over 200 million downloads already, so it has been there for a while. So the game has gone through quite an evolution from offline client-only ads monetization-only game to proper free-to-play game. And the next step for that is that it's going to be real-time multiplayer, thanks to Photon guys. So we are working on it, and you will see something amazing soon.
So thank you again for being here today. So we have a few subjects that we're going to dive in. And the first one is the current state of multiplayer. So obviously, multiplayer has been here for multiple decades, but it's been pretty much redundant, meaning that we all know what is a first-person shooter. We pretty much know what's going to be the end goal. And it's been, quite a long evolution from multiplayer to where we are today. And just to give you some stats, 5 years ago, in the top 100 grossing games, you had 12 games that were multiplayer. And nowadays, it's 78% of those games that are multiplayer. So already you can see the trend of multiplayer games are going more and more present into our ecosystem. So my first questions for you guys is that what have you seen? Where do you think things are right now? And will we go through some sort of a moment where all of us here will eventually do multiplayer?
Yeah, it's really hard to say if all of us will be doing multiplayer at some point. I think single player experiences still have a lot of place, but I think multiplayer is going through a lot of evolution. Like we're pretty good, I would say, in some sort of like competitive multiplayer spaces, but I think also like co-op experiences are something that players are yearning currently, and there aren't that many of those. There haven't been that many of those on the market yet, so I think that's at least something. There's also a lot of push for like this user-generated content type of stuff, and I think that's true for like single-player games to some extent as well. But I view all of that field as some sort of an extension to a multiplayer sort of universe, and it's been really tough lately to kind of get players to have any sort of retention in your game. So you kind of need to think about these sorts of experiences, and I think these are the sort of next evolution steps that we're gonna see.
Yeah, so definitely when you have players around and you participate, and especially if you go in a clan, there's 100% chance that the player will come back and see the growth of that group of individuals that you're part of. Yeah, definitely. And what about your point of view?
Is, competing against each other have been there already for a while, but having fun with friends and having good time together is something that is trending up now. And games like Stumble Guys and Amongst Us is something that clearly proves it, that there's a demand for it. And it's not so serious. It's very casual. It's easy to approach. You learn it in a minute because you see what everybody else is doing. So it's just becoming a little bit more casual entertainment than what it has been. And the area for more to enter the market, the barrier for market entry is becoming lower because previously it has been pretty much big boys game to do all the research work with the physics engines, etc. But now there are like alternatives that you can start developing the game, not developing the technology behind the game, and that makes it easier to build those entertainment products that serves a little bit of. There will be more variation what kind of players they serve.
And so not only on mobile, but if we look on VR, the most popular games are mostly multiplayer experience as well, such as Rec Room, VR Chat, or the poker games, and they just keep going and going, where the interaction between the players creates this collaboration effect. And I agree with you, which is cooperation. You know, is almost inexistent in games. It's always competition, fighting, between each other. So I would suggest all of you to investigate. Like even if we look at what kind of games kids are playing in the backyard. Sometimes it's games that everyone has to cooperate together to do something, and so there's multiple elements to learn regarding this. And when people collaborate, I was talking about that earlier, it releases dopamine when they succeed at achieving something. So there's new type of gameplays that we don't know, right? It's really hard to put a finger on it, but these needs to be created. So mobile is a device that we all carry in our pockets. It means that we can be notified at any times. So do you see like the mobile phone has the premier multiplayer destination at the moment? And because most of the time when we think about multiplayer, we think about PC games or console, right? But not necessarily on mobile. So since you have your live game, how do you handle these communication between the players, and how do they bring the moment together? Is it something that you explore or that you are looking for?
We employ a lot of like chat-related elements in the game. We try to have a lot of like community-based stuff. We actually even outside the game we put a lot of effort into actually having some sort of a community activity in Discord, in YouTube, and sort of trying to bring all of those elements together inside the game, inside a chat. There are team building elements that you can put together your own actual like team inside the game, and a clan feature as well, so you can kind of collaborate that way. with the other players. That's sort of we're still exploring like other ways of bringing more like maybe voice chat or something like that into the games. We haven't done that yet, so there's a lot of like opportunities for actually bringing the people together inside the games.
Yeah, our aim is also to bring people together, and originally when Drivehead was developed, it was a multiplayer game, although very, very low tech. You actually played on the same device, so it was already there. So core supports that, and it doesn't mean that it's not there anymore when you have a multiplayer with the different devices, because it can be the same context how you are playing the game. The fact is that we are all carrying our devices in our pockets. We can fire up a room right away and start playing together and enjoy that entertainment right away in the same room, in the same space. And we have kind of noticed that's very powerful thing, because communication channel exists there. So there are those swearing and hailing and celebrations and emotions authentically in that space when you are playing in the same room. It is of course good acid test to go to different room and see if the game is fun anymore. So we need to then establish the communication channel in between players. But I think there's more and more that kind of a habit that players are kind of firing up the game ad hoc when they are in the same space and enjoying it. Playing in the same side or playing against somebody, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, the trust and altruism are two beautiful things that make us human. Next subject, so exclusive tech finding. So obviously, like in the past years, there was multiple improvement. We did bring a lot to the table at Photon, but also what we're seeing a lot is, for example, with xCloud at Microsoft, where you have a cloud rendering that helps for some devices to be able to connect to each other. There's also, voice, we just talked about that, voice filters and other elements that are super interesting to personalize every single of the experience. What have you found that makes your life easier nowadays regarding like technology?
Do you happen to know of a company who does like real-time multiplayer components?
Yeah.
That has made our like multiplayer possible in the first place. I think Photon is now in use. First, Photon Unity networking that we use on Hills of Steel 2, and then Quantum that we use for our fourth Hush Hush project. But in addition to that, I think putting extra security layers into your actual build, so actual build security, some sort of a de novo solution or whatever, I think goes a long way to provide some extra protection to your build, so you make sure that hackers don't get into your game, they can't modify the memory values. Another thing is like you could of course probably have some sort of an authoritative server solution, and I believe you guys have some solutions to that as well. But I think on mobile the sort of build protection stuff works quite well to actually provide some extra layer of protection for your actual build, so the multiplayer experience isn't poisoned by players who can possibly cheat.
Yeah, for Drivehead, the deterministic nature of Quantum is something that we've been looking for years, and then it happened, and then we started developing the game. And one important fact for us is the video replays. So Drivehead, there are lots of kind of fun moments that happens when you hit your opponent or some obstacle hits you. And our players are quite keen on sharing those. And with the deterministic physics engine, we can actually do those in-game replays in the way that it's not video recording, but just saving the coordinates and actions, and then replay it in a save it in the very cost-efficient manner. So that has been very important for us, the deterministic nature of the engine.
And to add to that, sorry, so that's actually something that we're also planning for our fourth game, and it's like entirely made possible with the Quantum and how it's structured and how the deterministic physics engine works. So we're also like looking into that. I think that's a really big aspect that people can actually see and study other players' games and how they went, and kind of sort of that also creates that collaborative community effect in the game, and you have to add as many of those in your game as possible to actually succeed.
And that's the big advantage of multiplayer games, that you can look at others playing. and just by looking, you learn, and then you can improve your own abilities. So definitely, like replays is something you should look at because learning is a natural thing. Now let's go to our next subject, which is multiplayer productions. Single player, multiplayer, extremely different. So we're used to go like one way regarding building a simulation. Where we're talking about multiplayer, the simulation needs authority that we call, so that we can reconcile the elements. It means that when you control elements in your scene or in your game, it's different. But also the pipeline, the QA, the production of assets, and how to integrate all these things. So I'm curious about like if you had to evolve the way you produce or not.
Well, yeah, certainly. Like you mentioned, QA is probably the first thing that you notice during development, especially when if you have a smaller team like we usually do in mobile games, it's really hard to kind of test your actual PvP components of your game. You need to go around the company and be like, hey, let's play a session and let's have a session and let's test how this actually works. So that's already, you need a lot more resources for your actual QA process to make sure that everything works. Of course, testing different regions of the world, and maybe if you have some sort of way of testing actual network latencies and whatever, you have a lot more variance of what are all the things that can actually go wrong in the program. So that's already a lot more complex thing. And then also just maybe launching a game when it's multiplayer is really different, because I think you need to have a really good matchmaking system, of course, so that you can make sure that your players are matched with equally good players, so that they're actually having fun, that the win rate of the players is good. But for that, you need actual players to exist. So it's really hard to kind of have a good amount of players in all the regions and all the times of day to actually launch a game. So that's a really hard thing, and that means that you need a really good AI for your game. And at some point, if you play too much against AIs, you can kind of start to see patterns that they have, and patterns that emerge from the actual behavior of the AI. So that also you have to maybe do a bit more work on AI and make them behave like they were players in order to make an actually engaging experience of your game. So definitely production challenges are there's a lot more of them, and you kind of discover them as you go along in your first journey. And even when you've done it a couple times, you've done multiplayer for a while, you still discover new sorts of issues.
Because you cannot test multiplayer without user, right? So obviously bots helps big time.
Yeah.
How about you on your side?
I second those issues that are, but there's one positive thing, which is testing is quite popular inside the studio. So when we can have a daily sessions, because it's so damn fun to play the game, so that it's kind of tested all over again by the developers. So that's kind of a benefit of it.
Positive cursing
Yes,
you hear from
yes.
the studio is quite addictive.
Yep.
So one suggestion, I'm in the lucky position where I see hundreds of multiplayer games every month, and different kind of production. And one thing that I can say for everyone is that yes, it's fun to test in the studio, but it's very important to take new players that never played your build. So we call that the Kleenex effect, where you do it, you throw it away, because it's very important in multiplayer games to really have that first feeling, that first onboarding, so that people get into it all the way to the moment where they can reach players that have the same mindset, and then retention starts to happen.
Also to test to play the game in different places and contexts, is it public transportation or restaurant or bar or home or bedroom or wherever it is, it kind of gives a different flavor where you play the game.
And if there's one thing for sure is that interrupting someone in a multiplayer game, it's much harder than a single player game, because usually you have the pressure of your team or whatever, and you're like, no, don't make me stop my game. So so we all went through a very hard time in the past years, and multiplayer was great because then you could play with some friends or connect with your family using video chat and other services. like being together is important as being human. During your production or being with your live game, how did you, saw multiplayer as a solution?
Yeah, it's hard to say, like, but I think a lot of people kind of found the value for multiplayer games during COVID, and even I'm super thankful that we have platforms like Discord and we have multiplayer games that we could like connect with a lot of our friends, especially during the most biggest periods of lockdown. You could see like a lot of like new geos for us. We saw spikes in players when. And those aligned really well with the news that you read from like papers that Italy is in lockdown. We suddenly see like more players from Italy entering our game and playing those. So I definitely see that COVID like showed the value of that, and I think a lot of that hasn't gone away since the lockdowns have kind of. The COVID hasn't gone away, but like everything isn't locked down anymore. So there's definitely been like more value showed to people of these experiences.
Definitely there was bigger demand for connecting with people, and one multiplayer game is one way to do that. And the other factor is that we kind of learned how to communicate with different tools like video conferencing, etc., and organize those play sessions together so that we can, for example, agree that, hey, let's play that game at 3 o'clock today, and then your friends are there, and you establish communication channel wherever you do, and then enjoy the game together. So that's kind of a learning to communicate remotely is something that benefits multiplayer games quite a bit.
And so obviously when you do multiplayer production, we've touched it a little bit, there's a risk associated with bringing new teams into a vertical that they have never touched, but also like at an investment perspective, which is you're gonna not only spend time but spend money to making sure that you're successful into your multiplayer endeavor. So how do you mitigate risk, and how do you make sure that the steps that you're doing are in the right direction?
Hard question. Hard question, because I don't know which way I should go about answering it. Do you have anything for this?
I was going to say that hard question, you go first, but I mean, yeah, there are risks, but and of course there's cost involved. It's operational cost, how to run the servers, and how the audience like it, and risk if there's enough players in matchmaking. But all those can be somehow calculated and estimated, and the risk can be somehow mitigated. But I think the benefits are, of course, far bigger than the risks involved.
I think one of the biggest risks that you can mitigate somehow is the toxicity of the community. I think that's been a part of like multiplayer since from the beginning. Unfortunately, it is this case. We're right now exploring some sort of tools to actually help us moderate our chat a bit more automated. So having some sort of machine learning algorithms going into looking at actually are some players being toxic or whatever. That's at least something you can mitigate and should mitigate if you want your community to be actually good. Another thing is, of course, like if your server costs are high and your LTV is low, you need to kind of prepare for that. If you're going to have a really massively viral hit, but it doesn't like make any money, you have to kind of be careful about the server cost. So not opening too many countries in your soft launch, or maybe controlling the amount of downloads that you're actually getting. There's always some sort of a mitigation risk. But if you're not super sure that you're getting the money back, then you have to kind of look at the server cost versus actual LTV of the players and how that will go. Usually it isn't an issue if you have some sort of monetization in the game. The server costs are actually not like super high, but they can be somewhat high if the game is not making money, but it is getting a lot of downloads. It has a lot of virality.
So what we call like network topologies. So that helps to understand where your cost is going to be. So when the game is hosted on the client device, obviously it's going to be much cheaper than if it is on a dedicated server somewhere where you have to pay for the bare metal machine, the bandwidth, and all the other elements. And I totally agree. You have to target your person regarding the hosting system. And you touch a bit about there's a company called Community Sift. I don't know if you know that one. But it's a tip for you maybe. But they specialize in that, which is not on fishing or also on long period of time, 2-3 months, that adults that tries to convince kids to go somewhere. So there's going to be a detection that are automated, because obviously and that is great because it's actually the next subject, which is communities, right? Which is that you have to take care of your community, both outside of your platform, inside of your game. You have to be responsible. So communities, you can make a little change in your game, and then you have like a pitchfork and fire torches thrown at you, and you have to react to that. So how do you manage your community in general apart from the toxicity?
Yeah, so we have like in-house community management and customer support team. We take a look at all of our platforms where we have some sort of community activity. Especially Hills of Steel 1 even has a lot of like influencers who do videos in YouTube. We look at the comments from there. We have our own Discord server where we have thousands of players actually joining and discussing every day. We look at all of the reviews that we get. We look at all of the emails that we get from players, and our customer support team actually like kind of compiles lists to the actual product teams and discusses with them what the players are actually wanting. I think it's really important to kind of try to have as many community elements outside the game as well, because these days it's really hard to get users via UA just like that. So it's really good to have some sort of like organic growth going on in your game, and this is one of the best ways that I think like Hills of Steel 1 has grown, since it took off in kind of like YouTube land. And people started doing videos, and that kind of led to some good stuff in that game. So that's kind of how we look at the community stuff, I guess.
So if I dissect a bit what you said, so you take your support and community managers and then put the ponderation, and then I guess you have like your game designers as idea. You look at your KPIs, and based on that triangle, you're going to make decisions.
Yeah, that's exactly how it goes.
Okay, all right.
And what we're actually trying to also like now do in the future is actually release our roadmap for the game in our Discord.
Oh, wow.
Not everything in it,
Okay.
So not making false promises to the players, but the things that we know that are absolutely going to hit the game, we're probably going to be trying out actually releasing the schedule for when you're getting a new tank or when you're getting a new feature, and getting feedback from the players before they actually get the builds. Because I can see there's like, we release a really cool feature, we make really beautiful graphics, we make sure that the feature works well, and then players, sometimes they're like, why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? It's like, okay, I'm sorry, there was a miscommunication here. So we want to try to like establish a direct connection from the players to the dev team and try to look at the KPIs at the same time and make decisions for the product, what we should be actually doing.
Yeah, pretty similar approach. In Dodreams, we have a community management who does it and constantly communicates and tries to be a little bit kind of not following what's going on, but leading what's going on in community, releasing new stuff, what we are doing, and involving our community in decision making, for example, what event to run next, etc., so that they feel that they are part of the developing the game further. And about toxicity, not that much problem with that so far. So mainly
it depends how much you're willing to give to the community to spread the word.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you put a general chat worldwide,
That's the thing for us.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, and talking about that. So, obviously, we're all coming from different cultures, different languages. So you say you have the general chat. So does it mean that you have automatic translation, or are there elements in your chat? So how does a Vietnamese talk to an American, for example?
They usually talk in English, so
Okay.
we don't have any automatic translations. What we're going to probably do is like have then there are regional chats already. So
Okay.
there's a regional.
So you segregate the communities, let's say, right?
Not all of them. So there is a worldwide general chat, and then there are local ones. That's kind of how we've done it before. And then there are talks of if we should have like more specific topics for different channels. So, for example, if we add clans to Hills of Steel 2, maybe like a clan recruiting channel would be awesome, and that would actually like drive the discussion into a more productive way instead of just general stuff.
Sounds like a good idea. Can we steal that?
Sure, it's free.
But all ideas are always good to steal, by the way, because we can only be improved sometimes, right? So the next subject we have, it's the future of gaming. So, so you know, like you've been doing that for a long time, and we see both the devices getting better, the players having a better understanding of what is possible to be done in a game. And so gaming in general is about having fun and to actually enjoy the moment. So where do you see multiplayer, let's say in 5 years from now, considering that the the AR devices are probably going to hit the market in 3 years from now? But also like consoles and whatnot, or even like mobile. Will the mobile go away? I don't know. But do you have like some sort of like a vision of where you think things are going to go?
Not a huge vision, and I think it's gonna be multiplayer is probably gonna be like everywhere. I think even single player games are gonna have some sort of a social element in them, and they pretty much already do. So I think that's only going to be a continuing trend. Every game is going to have some sort of a multiplayer element, even if they have, because there already is. Like we watch games we love from Twitch and whatever. There's always going to be these more social elements. So I think it's just going to be an over-encompassing thing in every game, everywhere. I don't think mobile is going anywhere. I don't think PC and console is going anywhere. I don't think VR is going anywhere. But I'm super interested in seeing what sort of experience, for example, if VR really takes off and becomes mainstream, what sort of like multiplayer experiences are we gonna get in that front? That is super interesting, at least for me. I don't know. Do you have any?
Yeah, well, not that clear long-term vision where the industry is going, but next year will be a big year for multiplayer games. So because of threshold to launch them is getting lower and lower, and there will be I don't know if all the games, but most of the games will be multiplayer entertainment. Then what comes to gaming itself, I think it's not only that you are a gamer and you are active in a game. It may be that you are participating in a little bit more passive way, for example, as a spectator, or somehow influencing what's going on in the game, but you don't have to be like 100% focused on that the entertainment act that is going on. So it may be that some invest time in playing the game and being very active there, but some just visit game and spectate it or contribute some other way to that piece of entertainment.
Yeah,
But the games will be everywhere.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing also, like that is kind of a bigger thing bubbling under the hood is the sort of cloud gaming stuff. Not just Stadia, but also like I think the latest Microsoft Flight Simulator did some things where partially the game was like simulated in cloud and then streamed. So I think that's also an interesting thing, and that also ties into the multiplayer stuff. What are all of the simulations that you can do with technology like that? So that's also an interesting future direction that I think we're going to see more, but I don't know who will
we all heard about metaverses as well, so
that's true. That's also a direction.
So we saw like on our side like a huge intake of B2B businesses are going to build a new metaverse of this and that. So it's interesting to see like all this multiplayer tech that was built for gaming landing up in healthcare, education, and other verticals. So so we see that bubbling. So we have one more subject we wanted to touch, which is what kind of advice would you give for game developers in general that would like to give their tippy-toe inside the multiplayer or actually go full-fledged in it and start developing?
Yeah, here's one. Don't start building your physics engine yourself. It's well, there's a good alternatives in the market. So and
solid advice.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah,
give Quantum a try.
Yeah, that's solid advice. I would say be really careful about your matchmaking and have a plan of like do actual calculations based on your concurrent users that you're going to have in your game. Most likely, it can be a rough calculation, and try to figure out how the matchmaking would work. Then, what's the session length? How many players are in the game, and how many are you going to have in the lobby at any given moment to actually give others good opponents into the games. So I think that's a pretty big aspect to take into account. And of course, like I said before, also calculate your sort of server cost in terms of your LTV of your user. It can be a rough calculation. It probably is fine if you have any sort of good monetization in your game, but please do it so you won't be in a bad position later on. And I would say also, if you're going to have any sort of chat-related stuff, give it a function from the very beginning. So try to direct the conversation that is ongoing in your community and inside the game. Try to direct that as much as possible into the game itself. That leaves a lot of the toxic elements out, I would say, and that also like brings out more of the actual game into the players' hands, and they collaborate on stuff and they discuss about the different mechanics that the games has and stuff like that.
Yeah. One more thing is that test the game in different contexts. Play it together with somebody in the same room and in the different places, and design also the ways how players communicate to each other, because that's the quick part of the experience, so that they can share the emotions during the multiplayer play.
So one suggestion I can make for all of you is that if you're launching a game and there's no players or there's not enough to start a room, implement bots, right? So that way you can at least engage and play the game, because multiple times we see games at launch and they don't do any marketing, they don't do any UA, and they expect players to come, and the game requires 16 players at the same time or 40 players at the same time, and then you see the matchmaker going 7-8 player and then 5-3-2 and it goes up and down, while you can actually fill the room with bots, and then people can experience the gameplay, because it's when they play the game that they're going to continue to play the game. If they don't play it, there's no chance they're going to stay. So
Yeah, actually one interesting detail about that is the matchmaking time. You want to keep that very, very low in a mobile game. So it's like 5 to 10 seconds for any given match. That's kind of our rule for how long it should take. If you can't find a match, then just put the bot game in, because otherwise you'll start churning users, because nobody wants to be staying in a loop of like matchmaking, especially in a mobile game.
Mm-hmm. And another suggestion for bots is that the first gameplay, don't hesitate to put bots only, simply so that they can have a first try of the game and actually succeed, right? Even if they're playing very bad, it's just to give a good impression and a good moment for the players. So now with that question. So if any of you have questions, we have a microphone in the back. Don't hesitate if you have questions. We didn't have any questions so far from the crowd, so I invite anyone to not be afraid and break the glass.
Somebody, please.
Otherwise, oh, there we go. The microphone is coming. There we go.
A bit about your thoughts about retention in multiplayer games.
Sorry, can you repeat it?
If you can talk about your thoughts about retention and how to keep the players in the game.
Yeah, well, I think it doesn't. Most of the stuff doesn't really differ from your single-player experience, in my opinion. But it is. I think the matchmaking part is absolutely crucial in a multiplayer game to actually keep retention. So you want to have a good idea of what a full game session and how many wins and how many losses the player needs to have to actually feel good about playing the game, and trying to build your matchmaking around that. I think that's probably the key factor for retention in my book, at least.
Yeah, in our thinking, it has a huge retention driver because you have your friends reminding you about the game. You have your peer groups asking that, hey, did you play today? Let's play together. And they are reminding you that the game exists. And therefore, it's kind of visited more often than single player games.
Yeah, social investment provides a lot of retention.
There's the IKEA effect that I used to say in my live game operation days, which is that when you put value in something, you will come back to see what's happening. So when you have a community that is very engaging, and you give suggestions, and you or you start your own clan, there's obviously a way for you to always come back. And when you give the keys to the creators or the players to share a lot of things, then again, like, you're gonna have like this retention effect that starts. Don't be afraid to, give opportunities for the players to engage, but also extract content and put it outside of the game as well. So, well, thank you so much for panelists to be here today, Sami and Aarni.
This was awesome.
And thank you for everyone for assisting at this Master of Multiplayer track. We're gonna close this track with a reel. And thank you again one more time.